about the issues that they care about. We'll get to hear them engage with our audience and take some questions from you. And it's important to note that one of these three candidates will be our Democratic nominee for this Senate District seat. So it's a really important conversation that we'll have. We should also note that John Tarantino is running unopposed for the Republican nomination for this seat, and so that's the reason he's not with us this evening. Before we begin, we'd like to offer some sincere thanks. So a huge thanks go to our event partners, Polis, the Center for Politics here at Duke, the Samuel Du Bois Cook Center on Social Equity here at Duke, and the Duke Democrats. We would also like to acknowledge a special thanks to Dr. Brittany Stansbury. Dr. Stansbury, who is the project manager for the Health Equity Working Group at the Cook Center, along with BJ Rudell, who is Associate Director of Polis, put so much work into making tonight's event possible, so we're really grateful to both BJ and Brittany. And so now I'll turn it over to Professor Asher Hildebrand, who will offer a review of ground rules for tonight's discussion and the format.
Thanks, Deandra. And I suppose at this point we should welcome our candidates into the room.
Yes.
All right. I am Asher Hildebrand. I'm an associate professor of the practice associate professor of the practice here at the Sanford School, and I join my colleague Dr. Rose in welcoming you here tonight. Both for our candidates, thank you for being here, and for those of you joining us, we hope to have more people joining throughout the course of the forum. I was just told there are 5 events in this building tonight alone, so we're getting in under the wire here before the primary. But it is my pleasure to be a part of this. Although I work at the Sanford School now, my background is in working in Congress and in campaign politics. So on a sort of personal level, I respect and admire the decision all of you have made to stand for office. I'm also a resident of the 20th Senate District, and so this race is personal for me as well. Our goal today is to promote a spirited, candid, and respectful discussion of the challenges facing our community and the candidates' plans for addressing them as members of our North Carolina Senate. And the questions we'll ask will fall primarily into 4 issue areas: economic growth and mobility, housing, transportation, and the environment, criminal and social justice, and healthcare and education. If that sounds like more than 4, well, we kind of cheated. But even so, it omits many important issues that might be on your minds or the minds of our candidates. And so we had to draw the line somewhere, but ask that during our audience Q&A portion, if there's anything we haven't covered, please feel free to bring that up. Relative to Democratic presidential primary debates, 3 candidates might not seem like a lot, but we do have a lot of ground to cover and want to make sure that each candidate has an equitable opportunity to speak. And so I'm going to go over the ground rules we'll be using in our best effort to run a tight ship. However, I will say, especially during audience Q&A, we can keep this pretty informal and make sure that as many of you as possible get a chance to ask the questions that you have. So the ground rules we'll use will be as follows. First, we're going to ask each candidate to give an opening statement of no more than 2 minutes in an order that has been randomly selected ahead of time, but it will actually be in reverse order of how they're seated facing you. In other words, Ms. Murdoch will go first, Mr. Fremont second, Mr. Ellis third. Following opening statements, we'll ask our main questions. During that portion, we ask that each of you limit your answers to no more than a minute. And we will address the questions initially to one of you, but then give the other one, each of the other 2 a minute as well to respond. And we'll rotate among the 3 of you so that you all have an opportunity to answer the same number of questions. The aforementioned Dr. Sansbury, who's right there, will be holding yellow and red cards. Again, it may not be necessary to be too formal about it, but insofar as we need to, she'll hold the yellow card when you have 30 seconds left and the red card when you have 10 seconds left, so you know how much time. We will not cut you off mid-sentence, but just don't ask us. So we will do each, Dr. Rose and I will each ask two groups of questions, and then we'll be inviting some students to ask questions, and then after that to audience Q&A. During audience Q&A, we'll have students circulating with mics. If you can identify yourself.
Hi.
And so if you have a question, simply raise your hand and she will come to you. We ask that you ask your question as a question. In other words, no comments. Please have a question mark at the end. We ask that you ask one question, and again, with a crowd of this size, if you have more than one, we'll probably be able to come back to you, but start with just one. And then we also ask that you indicate to whom your question is addressed, whether it's to one of the candidates or to all three. Finally, following audience Q&A, we'll ask each of our candidates to give a closing statement. Again, that will be 2 minutes as well. And I know we're getting started a little late here, so we'll do our best to end on time by 7 o'clock. Finally, a couple of ground rules for the audience. If you have not silenced your phones, please do so. If you need to use the restroom or leave early, well, please don't leave early. We want you to stay. But if you do need to slip out, please wait until the speaker is finished speaking before you do so, just out of respect for our speakers. Any questions from the candidates, from you all? All right, well, I'm going to start with sort of a big picture question, I guess, which is simply, what do you see as, oh, sorry, yes, thank you, Dina. She's reminded me we're going to start with opening statements before the big picture. So, Ms. Murdoch, to you first.
All right, mic check. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Natalie Murdoch, and I'm a proud candidate for North Carolina State Senate District 20. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina, where my grandmother was a cafeteria worker. She made only 90 cents an hour. She started a cafeteria strike, and without the support of a union, worked with her colleagues to work their way up to $3 an hour. So fighting for what's right and standing up in the midst of very difficult circumstances is in my blood. From there, I went on to UNC Chapel Hill. I'm standing with all of you in solidarity this evening with the Duke Blue one. But I was very, very active at UNC Chapel Hill, worked to organize voter registration drives as well as fight for higher wages for cafeteria workers. But upon graduation, was shocked to realize how difficult the job market was, and was actually college educated. Only $10 an hour. At the time, my rent in Durham, lived in Durham at the time, was $525 a month. Average rent now is around $1,200. So I will legislate from my lived experience of knowing how hard it is to live without a living wage. So fast forward to, did some work with Deborah Ross on her U.S. Senate campaign, worked with Attorney General Josh Stein. And from there, made my way back to Durham and was asked by a community member to run for office. So I actually serve all of you as a Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor, very passionate about environmental issues. The first thing I did upon election was to organize a meeting with General Assembly members to make sure that small farmers had the resources that they need to thrive and survive. So, with that, I will legislate from my lived experience. I look forward to having a conversation with all of you this evening and want to share with you my vision for Durham and the people of District 20. Let's talk.
Thank you, Ms. I should have said feel free to applaud. Just save your applause until after they're done speaking. All right, Mr. Freelon.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All right, my name is Pierce Freelon. I want to apologize in advance for my attire. I came straight from the streets. I've been knocking on doors all day at the polls, talking to voters and speaking with some local business owners around Durham, where I was born and raised. And when I was on my way over here, I called my wife and was like, "Babe, I'm running late. I'm still wearing my hoodie," you know. And she said she offered to come bring me a suit, and I told her, actually, you know, I think I'm gonna rock what I have. My hoodie says "Black by popular demand," and that should tell you something about who I am and what I stand for. I run a community organization here in Durham called Black Space. It's a digital makerspace for youth of African descent. We try to bridge the digital divide, teach kids coding and 3D printing, as well as music. And I've been endorsed by the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People, so I'm pretty unapologetically black, and I will legislate from that perspective unapologetically. But I do realize, with the respectability politics of being on a campus like this and a forum like this, what the dress may imply. So I look forward to getting into the policy so you can see what's beneath the hoodie. Y'all not gonna judge me, are you?
No.
Okay, good, I'm glad to hear that. But again, I was born and raised here in Durham. I've taught in the political science department at North Carolina Central University. I also teach in African American studies at UNC Chapel Hill. I have served the city of Durham as the vice chair of the Durham Human Relations Commission. I've also served the state. I was appointed by Governor Bev Perdue to serve on the North Carolina Arts Council, and at the federal level, I worked with Secretary Clinton on a program that did conflict resolution and cultural diplomacy abroad, which is where my research is based. So, thank you. Looking forward to chatting. Pierce Freelon. No claps.
Mr. Ellis.
Good evening, I'm Gray Ellis, and I'm also running for North Carolina State Senate District 20. From the state that brought us HB 2 and HB 142, I'm the first trans man to ever run for any office in the state of North Carolina. And if I'm elected, I'll be the first trans senator in the U.S. history. I'm a dad, I'm a partner, I'm a business owner, I'm an attorney, I'm so much more than a trans man. But that is part of who I am. And I also am unapologetic for that. Professionally, I've been in the community for 25 years. I've worked in juvenile court with at-risk youth. I've worked in family court with our families who are falling apart. I'm also the vice president of Meals on Wheels, where every day I make sure that the elderly and the disabled get a meal and human contact. And that may be all they receive that day. I've been trusted to advocate for thousands of people in this community for 25 years who sometimes have little or no voice at all. My platform includes healthcare reform, including Medicaid expansion, and mental health reform that we so desperately need. Education reform, including funding and parity, and vocational training back in high schools. Common sense gun legislation so that this campus isn't the next Virginia Tech. The environmental issues. We can't breathe our own air, drink our own water. None of this is going to matter anyway. Anti-discrimination laws for everyone, from the ERA to My Body, My Choice, to the assault that's currently on the LGBT community. It must end. And ending voter suppression and gerrymandering. We need independent counsel to draw those maps. Serving as your next senator is a significant task. It's not a title. It's a responsibility. And it's one I take very seriously. The ability to get the job done comes from life experience and professional experience. It actually translates to the job. Senator McKissick has held this since 2006, and he supports my candidacy and asked me to run. I ask you to support me as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to the main question part. Again, we'll have 2 rounds of questions from each of us, and then turn it to our students and the rest of you to get in. So be thinking about the questions you want to ask. We will start now with a big picture question, just to dive into it. And I'm going to address this first to Mr. Ellis, and then we'll just go down the line. And that is, what do you believe is the greatest challenge facing Durham today, and what specifically would you do as a state senator, as opposed to all of the other things you have been doing already to address that challenge?
We have several issues in Durham right now, and I think affordable housing is going to come to the top of probably everyone's list. We've got 1.2 million people in North Carolina who can't find affordable housing. We've got 1 in 28 kids under the age of 6 who are homeless. That's before we get into the specifics here in Durham. The State Housing Trust Fund used to be where we could get money from the state to be able to fund affordable housing in our communities. Over the past 10 years, it's been cut by 2/3. It used to be $21 million a year, now it's $7 million a year. That is a specific thing that I will be working on and advocating. There was a bill introduced in May of 2018, it's Senate Bill 784. It went nowhere, but it focused on additional funding for workforce housing loan programs, additional funding for North Carolina Housing Trust Fund, as well as directing Legislative Research Commission to study affordable housing across the state so that we knew how to better handle the issue. That's where my focus would be.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. I think the biggest issue facing Durham right now is poverty. It's a broad issue that has implications for housing, it has implications for transportation, for education, and there are a couple things I'll do about it. First thing I think we need to do in the General Assembly is have a progressive tax that allows us to tax the wealthier residents of Durham at a higher rate, so we could use those extra funds to subsidize things like affordable housing. And in Durham, we have had $2 billion of investment in a 1 mile radius of downtown, while right up the street, McDougal Terrace residents are suffering from carbon monoxide and other issues related to poverty. So that would be the first thing that I've advocated for as a state senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brett.
Yes, thank you so much for the question, and thank you, Mr. Freelon, for bringing up McDougal Terrace. This district is very, very diverse, so that is a question that really kind of gets to the heart of how you focus on one issue when this district includes McDougal Terrace, it includes North Carolina Central University, Duke, as well as the RTP. So I think I honestly would highlight a lot of what has already come before us and saying that wages in combination with housing is something that we really have to get a handle on. And as a state senator, I will legislate from the perspective of knowing that we're limited. Durham is very progressive, but when it comes to the General Assembly, there's something called preemption. So we don't have the ability to be as progressive and liberal as we would like to be. It's difficult to do things like inclusionary zoning. We mentioned HB2 earlier. If the General Assembly wants to continue to restrict the ability for local governments to have a say-so in how they want to run their own local governments and to create more affordable housing and to make sure that developers provide funds for things like affordable housing, we have to get a handle on preemption.
Thank you. Following in sort of in a similar line of questioning, this one starting with Mr. Freelon, if you are elected, nominated and then elected to the state senate this fall, there's at least a decent chance that you'll be serving as part of a legislative minority. Yes. And as somebody who has spent much of my life toiling in a legislative minority, I can tell you it is a frustrating place to be. Yeah. And yet, it also requires you to make judgments about where you fight and where you try to work across the aisle to get things done. Right. And so how would you approach that question, and are there specific areas of policy where you believe you could actually build some bipartisan support to that?
Thank you, great question. So I think one of the things that distinguished Senator McKissick was his ability to work across the aisle. He had a lot of friends on both sides of the aisle. And one of the things he told me was that, you got to work with these folks that you might disagree with without calling them an SOB. That was his words. So you got to find a way to be civil.
You hear that in his voice.
Right. You got to find a way to be civil and to work with these folks. One area where I think there could be some bipartisan support is around marijuana decriminalization and really just a sweeping marijuana change in policy. I think that there's a huge opportunity to build some economic development in the rural parts of the county. And then there's a criminal justice piece, which of all the Trump administration shenanigans over the past 4 years, one thing that they got decently, got some bipartisan traction on was criminal justice reform with the first chance. And so I think that there's an opportunity to tell Republicans, hey, you've started here, let's continue to build on that, let's decriminalize marijuana and address the war on drugs and criminal industrial complex, prison industrial complex.
Thank you. Ms. Murdoch, and Ms.
1 minute is so short.
Yeah, so thank you for this question. Newsflash, we came into, I guess, probably the last few months thinking we had a really good shot at taking the Senate. And I am one of 20 some odd women that are running for state Senate, and it is my belief that we will take the Senate maybe by 1 or 2 seats with women. So I'm really excited to do that, but have a lot of experience in working with individuals that do not agree with me on a lot of things. When I worked in Asheville, we actually had to work in the midst of not only the Republican takeover, but the Tea Party takeover. We had to work with very, very extreme individuals and figure out how to get things done. And a bipartisan issue that I enjoy working on is transportation. We're right here at Duke. You all need better access to transit options. We need to figure out something with high capacity transit. Our state is one of the fastest growing states in the nation. I think we're 9th or 10th. And we have to get serious about public transportation. So I'm very comfortable working with individuals that don't agree with me on a lot of things. Through that experience, had the opportunity to work with a regular Republican, Chuck McGrady, on transportation issues. He was chair of our MPA when I was in Asheville, and we may disagree on 90% of things, but that 10% that you agree on allows you to build those relationships so that you can actually get some things done.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis.
I grew up in Whiteville, North Carolina. So I know how to speak Whiteville, and I know how to speak Raleigh. And I think that's really important when you're talking about working with senators who are from across the state. Having a common language and lingo. It'll be a connection between the two of you. I'm also a divorce attorney. So you want to talk about War of the Roses and having to deal with very polarized people? I'm a family law specialist and I've been doing it for 18 years. I think a lot of this comes from age and experience. And that's what I bring to this position. I'm 47 years old. I've been practicing for 18 years. And I'm someone with a very diverse background. And I think one place that we are so close on being able to connect on both sides of the line is on Medicaid expansion. I think both sides understand it's morally correct, and I think both sides understand it's fiscally the right thing to do. And I think we can do that.
Thank you so much. So shifting gears a little bit to turn to the economy and upward mobility. What needs to be done to help constituents in Senate District 20 achieve upward socioeconomic mobility? And we're especially interested in knowing about your concrete strategies for achieving these goals in the state Senate. I'll start with you, Ms. Murdoch.
Great, thank you so much. So I also have a diverse background, and that includes economic development. So I had to do economic development work as an intern in rural Western North Carolina counties where you barely have any doctors in that county, where you don't have a lot of opportunities even in the high school. So I actually proposed that we have tuition-free community college for that reason. There are a lot of rural areas that will provide them with a hub to have that job training. Something that I worked on there was a project actually with Google. So I think we need to do a better job of having public-private partnerships. We're in the RTP, but there's a huge gap where so many individuals, so many residents across the district, based on their zip code, do not have the same opportunities that people that live within District 20. So for that reason, not only should we have job training, but we really need to get back to apprenticeship programs. We need to really highlight the beauty of our community college system. We need to do a better job of really training young people for the jobs of tomorrow. I ended up in economic development and transportation. I was not exposed to any of those fields when I was in grade school. So I think we need to do a better job of just looking at the overall landscape of what jobs and opportunities are out there. We also need to raise wages. No matter what job you have, you should be making a living wage so that you can actually survive in gentrified Durham.
Thank you so much, Ms. Murdoch. Mr. Ellis.
So I think Durham has a lot of skilled jobs available. The issue is we don't have the skilled labor force at this point. And what seems to be happening is we've got this polarization. We're losing our middle class. And people who may not have the ability, or perhaps it's not appropriate for them to attend a major university or to make it to the NBA or to be a YouTube star, are getting left out. So what we have to do is really bring some vocational training back to high schools so that people have an option starting at the high school level to learn how to do medical insurance coding or be an LPN or learn some plumbing trade skills or electrician trade skills. These are jobs that are out there, they're available, and we can't fill right now. And it's actually not just a Durham issue or a state issue, it's a national crisis. We're losing the middle class, and that's primarily why. That's one of the things.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Fee.
Yes, I'm going to try to stay within that 60-minute gap. I see y'all over there with your signs. The first thing, to echo something Natalie said about a living wage, is we need to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Long overdue, very important. I'm also advocating for a jobs guarantee. This is something that Dr. Sandy Darity here at the Samuel Boyce Cook Center of Racial Equity has advocated for at the federal level. There's a lot of talk out there, especially with the presidential candidates talking about universal base income as bold, innovative, visionary ideas to address poverty. And I think Dr. Darity argues that a jobs guarantee is a feasible way to do that, something that can actually get bipartisan support, and that's something that I'll fight and advocate for as state senator.
Thank you, Mr. Freeland. Mr. Ellis, I'll start with you on this next question. So to connect with this idea of a jobs guarantee, I'm wondering, how would you approach bringing jobs to North Carolina? And I'm wondering specifically, what would you propose to do to increase job opportunities? And do you see this as a matter of attracting large businesses to the state or focusing on cultivating small businesses here at home?
I think we've got to focus on our skilled labor force. And I'm not so concerned about bringing big industry, but instead small businesses here. I'm a small business owner. And I've been self-employed since 2008, and I know the benefits and the detriments of being a small business owner. And it's something that I think that we can focus on here in North Carolina, and that's not an urban or a rural issue. We can do that anywhere. And what's happening is with these larger corporations coming in, they're taking these massive tax cuts and subsidies, as opposed to us being able to use those monies to feed back into our infrastructure, to put into our public schools, to put into our mental health structure, to put into our healthcare system. And so that's where I would focus.
Thank you so much. Mr. Freeland?
As soon as you asked the question, I wrote down the word equity, because I know that jobs, a lot of businesses are looking to go places and they're thinking about the experience that their employees will have in that place. So HB2 is very harmful for business here in North Carolina. The fact that we haven't expanded Medicaid is bad for business. Green energy investments will be really important for business. There are businesses out there, because the president pulled us out of the Green Accord, the Paris Accord, that are trying to meet their own sustainable goals. So they want to make sure they have access to green renewable energy. And so if the state's not going to do it, then the businesses are looking for places. Sorry, if the federal government's not going to do it, they're looking for states that are willing to provide them opportunities to meet those carbon neutral goals. And I think those will be three things: HB2, expand Medicaid, green energy investments will be great for business in North Carolina.
Yes, thank you for the question. I'm also a small business owner, a new small business owner. Started my own business in 2017, and my grandfather actually left home at the age of 12, went on to start his own business in concrete, back to those trades, picked up those trades in high school. So I think we definitely need to build up small businesses. They employ more people. I don't think that our small businesses get enough credit. They don't get enough support, but they are a huge, huge employer for kind of that small local economy. And I like the new trend of we cannot attract big corporate jobs and sell our souls and just shell out all these incentives when we get nothing in return. Coming from economic development, I know what that world looks like. We used to will and deal and fly up to Canada and all these places to attract these corporate jobs, but what are you really getting in return? Just to have a press release to say you brought 200 jobs, what do you do? Are you providing infrastructure for water and sewer? If we need to expand, if that causes us to build more schools, are you going to help us with that expansion? So I think that I like the gut check that we've had in culture to say that we really have to support our small businesses. We also have to get a handle on giving way too many breaks to big businesses when we just really aren't getting enough in return. So I think there is a balance where you like to have those jobs, but you don't need to give up so much upfront for when you may not receive very much in the long-term impact of your local community.
All right, we're going to move into a section on transportation, housing, urban development issues. I want to start with you, Mr. Freeland, and something you referred to in your opening statement, which was the situation at McDougal Terrace. And many members of the Duke community, like many members of the broader Durham community, have contributed time and money and raised their voices in solidarity with the residents. And looking ahead, I guess what I'd like to hear from each of you is, one, how do you go about not so much assigning blame, but ensuring accountability for what's happened so far? And then two, what would you aim to do as a state senator to address affordable housing and make sure that another McDougal Terrace doesn't happen again?
Yeah, well, the thing is, another McDougal Terrace is happening right now in other projects across Durham and in other cities across the country. Unfortunately, it's not the exception, it's the standard, and it is the result of, poverty is a policy choice. And we need to make sure that our legislators and at the city council at the federal level are pouring money and making investments in the communities that need the support for housing, for education. It's not just one thing. We learned from radical black feminists about intersectionality. Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term, and it speaks about the intersecting ways in which oppression works. And particularly, if you're black, if you're poor, it has that quadruple impact on your life. And so we need things like a jobs guarantee help address that from a broader perspective. It is impossible to answer a question like that in 60 seconds. I'm so sorry.
We can come back.
Yeah, I would love to come back.
Ms. Murdoch.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. And I think the larger, again, agreeing with Pierce here, a part of it is just kind of poverty and systemic poverty. You will talk to McDougall Terrace residents. I've spent a lot of time there when I first came back to Durham with a number of my projects. I actually went to a number of the housing authority properties throughout Durham on my own, just because we needed their feedback if we were serious about transit. And there are residents who have lived there in various properties 20, 25 years. So I think we need to have just a larger discussion of the fact that the HUD model is not working. I think we also need to talk about elections have consequences. I saw this coming. Unfortunately, when Ben Carson was named as the head of HUD, the first thing I thought about was Oldham Towers, Liberty Street, McDougall. What is going to happen when these facilities are crumbling because they're old, they need renovation, they've been neglected for so many years, and we strategically, not we, the president, the person in the White House strategically puts individuals at the head of these agencies to erode them. So I think we need to have greater conversations of how do we not only get people out of poverty, but how do we give individuals credit for the rent that they're paying. I was shocked to learn how much people are paying to even live in McDougall Terrace. Insane. They should not be paying that much money to even live there. Why don't they get credit for the rent that they're paying? And why can't that transition them into home ownership? And then it also leads back to livable wages and making sure that individuals can get better employment opportunities. It's all interconnected.
Thank you, and I know we have plenty to say about this, and we'll make sure we return to it. For now, Mr. Ellis.
I think part of this goes back to what I've already addressed with the State Housing Trust Fund. The reality is that this is a HUD issue primarily from a funding standpoint. Then there's some that leaks down to the state. And then you have to hold the city and the county responsible for what they do with those dollars and making sure that they are actually going into these properties, properly inspecting them, and reporting it when they're not. What was happening at McDougall Terrace since 2016, they have been failing all inspections. And I'm not talking about a 59 out of 60 or 59 out of 100. I'm talking in the 30s. It's been something that's been known for years, and it's been ignored and not reported and not dealt with. And the way that we deal with it is how we vote.
Moving from housing to transportation, and starting with you, Ms. Murdoch, you made reference to doing outreach in the context of transit planning, and I know you've spent much of your career working on local transportation issues, including for a time at the Regional Transit Authority, Go Triangle. I'm treading carefully given where we sit on this issue. So I'm less interested in relitigating, but more interested in looking forward. Yes. What can our community learn from the failure of the Durham Orange Light Rail Transit project? Yes. And in general, what does the state need to do as you think about being a state senator to address the public transit needs of rapidly growing areas like the Triangle?
Thank you so much for that question. That is a reason why I'm running. What is severely underreported, the first nail in the coffin for light rail was the inability of the General Assembly to provide it with funding. Charlotte's rail system received 25% state funding. When the light rail came around, we thought we had our 25%. All the rankings looked phenomenal. We were told by DOT, you're going to get your 25%. Lo and behold, we didn't get that. So I think a lot went wrong, and being the location that we're here at Duke University, I think
you don't have to pull your punches. Yeah.
I think having open and honest conversations about the partners and having everyone on board. I also worked for the transit system at Chapel Hill. It was a fare-free system, but it's fare-free because UNC Chapel Hill is on board. So my focus in the short term, what we can do right now is build the best, most robust bus system that we possibly can have. The Bull City Connector is no longer free. Duke University used to contribute funds towards that. So I think everything needs to be on the table, but we definitely can do a better job of having more connectivity. We've had a lot of discussion about jobs. What if you can't get to those jobs? So transportation costs contribute to your inability to afford your housing. So I think particularly over the next 2 to 3 years, the focus needs to be on a more robust transit network. And in the Senate, I will work to make sure that we fully fund public transportation. And I look forward to at some point having a fair, free transit system right here in Durham.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis.
I don't think that result was surprising at all. We saw it coming. Because if you listened and you communicated, you knew that all stakeholders were not on board. And that's step one. You have to make sure that everyone who has a vested interest in whatever we're talking about is on board and committed to whatever we're doing. I think one thing to remember is that one place North Carolina actually does a decent job of funding is in transportation. But we need to reallocate those funds. It can't be all on highway systems for single cars. We need to look into public transit, reallocating those funds into public transit, and then we can start to move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Freeland.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with Natalie that our public transportation needs to be free. It's another policy issue, and I was so disappointed when Bull City Connector started charging a fee. I think right now we're looking at some rapid transit models and creating dedicated lanes for that, which I think is a good idea. But you know, if you look at the vote part is really important, because Charlotte was able to get their light rail funded because they had a Republican mayor. It was, what was his name? McCrory, you know, and he was the darling of the majority at the time. And, you know, if we really want to get the transit solutions that make sense for the triangle, we need to flip the House and flip the Senate. And I hope to be one of those people representing Durham's District 20, because it's a social justice issue. Access to jobs, being able to move is a privilege and it shouldn't be. We should have you know, equal and equitable access to movement through public transportation, and that's what I'll fight for.
So let's turn right now to healthcare. So I'll start with you, Mr. Ellis. Right now, the North Carolina Republican-led state Senate still maintains the numbers necessary to block Medicaid expansion. Can you tell us a little bit about what your strategy would be to build a coalition that would get bipartisan support on this issue?
Sure. So I actually think we're a little closer than the public might think. I've talked to Senator Woodard and I've talked to Senator McKissick about this, and they feel pretty strongly that we're really close. And I think it's because, as Democrats, we tend to lean more towards the moral thing, and as Republicans, they might lean more towards the fiscal things. Well, this is something that crosses both lanes. It is morally responsible and it's fiscally responsible. When we're talking about we're losing $2 billion a year by refusing to expand Medicaid in terms of new jobs, we're looking at rural hospitals that are going bankrupt. We're looking at maternity wards that they're having to close. We're going into crisis from a healthcare perspective, and we're sitting in the city of medicine. That's not acceptable. So we have to make sure to change that, and I think we can.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Freeland.
Yes, Medicaid expansion is one of the top priorities of my platform. It's very important. I think that one of the things that we need to do is talk directly to the voters and the constituents of some of these lawmakers that are against it, because you know, folks are really voting against their own best interests. A lot of the folks whose representatives are voting against Medicaid expansion have chronic health issues in their families, and I think if you can make that direct connection, well, there's a couple things. We need to raise money, we need to knock doors, we need to flip the House and the Senate. But I think an important piece of that is to communicate with conservatives in rural areas of North Carolina to say, hey, look, there are alternatives here, and to encourage and but to encourage, you know, Republican folks who are for Medicaid expansion to run and to really get behind making that shift an important part of their platform and their message.
It is absolutely critical that we expand Medicaid, and for me, it's more than a campaign slogan. As a new business owner, I actually went without health insurance for some time, so I actually do know what it feels like to hold your breath and pray that you won't get sick, to pray that you won't get in an accident in the event that you do not have health care. And in talking with individuals in District 20 For some people, it's just become a way of life where they just learn how to literally live without healthcare. And I also don't want to overstate how difficult it is to get it done. That's why we don't have a budget. We currently don't have a budget because we're still fighting over Medicaid expansion. It's immoral, it's inhumane to turn away from free money because you don't want to provide a basic human right, which is healthcare. It's completely unacceptable. As individuals have said earlier tonight, we are the city of medicine. It is our top employer right here in Durham. So not only do we benefit from it as a city, employers benefit. You should want healthy workers that want to work and be productive. If they're sick and have to show up to work sick, they don't have the ability to do that. So there's so many financial benefits that come along with this. I can't wrap my head around why anyone would not want to do that. And we'll fight like tooth and nail to not only expand Medicaid, but to improve our healthcare system as a whole. And definitely agree with the comments about it's also a rural issue. So it's something that we need to really engage rural residents with because we also do not have enough physicians, dentists, all of that in these rural communities as well.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to turn to one of our amazing students, Leah Abrams, who is with the Duke Democrats. And Leah will start us off in our Q&A session. And so just as a quick reminder, please do limit your questions to questions that have question marks at the end of them. And we hope that you will indicate if your question is for one particular candidate when you ask it. And Brittany, who has been holding up the colored cards, reserves the right to collect the microphone at any time in the interest of time. So Leah, over to you.
Great, thank you. Oh, hello? Okay, thank you so much, Professor Rose. I'm really excited to get to kick off the Q&A session, and then I can run the mic to you should you have... Oh, stand up. Oh, cool. Well, I will run the mic to you when you have a question, and please just introduce yourself, and like Professor Rose said, indicate whether the question is for a specific candidate. But I'm really excited to kick off the Q&A session by asking about education. I'm a product of the North Carolina public school system, and so I know what we've been through over the past decade or so in terms of education funding. And I want to ask all of you, maybe starting with Mr. Freelon, because that's the order I think we're in last. How do you define success for North Carolina students at every level of schooling? And what can you do as a senator to provide that success? Thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful question. I too am a product of Durham Public Schools. I went to E.K. Poe Elementary, Durham School of the Arts, Bull City, born and raised. I think the first thing we need to do, the most important thing we need to do, is raise teacher pay. As recently as 2017, North Carolina was 47th in the nation in teacher pay. And I mean, I've got a lot of friends of mine, millennials, that have left the profession of teaching because they spent 4 years in college to get a degree, and they can make a lot more money shooting weddings on the weekends, And so we really need to make sure that we're taking care of our teachers, and that's the first step. We take care of our teachers, our administrations. There's a lot of other work to be done around the school-to-prison pipeline. We have way too many SROs and not enough counselors and people who do trauma-informed care, who do mental health. Did y'all hear about the 6-year-old who was arrested at school, this week? That's because our schools have turned into prisons, and it really, the school-to-prison pipeline is on full display when we have 6-year-old children being arrested from school. So I think that's another important issue we need to address.
And if the other candidates would like to respond to that.
Yes. The first policy proposal I rolled out as a candidate was for public education, and I named it after Omega Parker and Senator Jeannie Lucas, who was the first Black woman to serve as a senator at the state level and was also a public administrator. And teacher pay definitely has to be key. In Durham, we're doing great with principal pay, but with teacher pay, we need to do a much better job. Here in Durham County, we can provide a local supplement that provides more funding for that teacher pay, but across the board as a state senator, I would advocate for a starting salary of $45,000. We also need to completely reinstate the Teaching Fellows program. We also have an issue of diversity in our schools. We don't have enough Black men that are teachers in our schools, and there is a direct correlation to your success as a student if no one in that classroom looks like you, if none of your teachers look like you. I distinctly remember having very difficult situations with teachers that did not like me simply because of the color of my skin, and it did not feel good. I hold that with me to this day. So we need to diversify our classrooms. And also with the school to prison pipeline, it's actually young Black girls are the highest growing number, very high rates of suspension and expulsion. So there is a direct correlation with that. We have to get a handle on that and also redefine what our school resource officers are doing, and to get a plan to decrease their numbers and eradicate them altogether.
So I too am a product of public schools in Whiteville, North Carolina. And I think it's important to remember that equal is not necessarily equitable. And 3/4 of our funding comes from the state, the other quarter comes from counties. And that's not going to make for an equitable public school system. And every year we are failing the Leander test, and hopefully most people in here are familiar with the Leander case, that says that constitutionally North Carolina is failing, not providing a sound, basic public education. And that's horrific. I was in public school at a time, this ages me a bit, when we were actually in the top 5 in the country on how we treated our students and the per student public funding that we had. I think it's also important to remember that we haven't increased funding for public schools except for cost of living issues since 2008, when we went way down because of the recession. We've got to bring that way back up. We aren't in a recession anymore, baby. We've got to fix that. And then in terms of removing public school monies to fund charter schools, which aren't living up to their mission anymore. And then we're giving vouchers for private schools that can discriminate based upon race, based upon gender, based upon any reason that they want to. We cannot use our public money in that way. We've got to put it back in our public school systems.
Thank you so much.
And at this time, we'll have Leah begin walking. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and we will pass the mic to you. Please tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Victoria. I'm a senior here at Duke. And this question's for Mr. Ellis. I was just wondering if you could talk more specifically about what you said earlier about how we're a lot closer to Medicaid expansion than you think, and also how you expect to grow our mental health access if the Medicaid expansion is not where we really need it to be yet.
Sure. So I think that part of this is a big Republican show, that most of them realize fiscally that this makes the most sense. And as our rural hospitals go into disrepair and go bankrupt, they're not going to have much choice but to get on board. And I think behind the scenes, that's what I'm being told they're talking about. So in terms of mental health reform, that's something that's very much on my platform and near to my heart. As a divorce attorney, I see every day how mental health, lack of access, and lack of parity in terms of health insurance coverage for mental health treatment is causing our families to fall apart. This is already an ACA rule where the health insurance is required to fund treatment for mental health issues in the same way that it does physical health issues, and we fail every year. NAMI grades us out with an F every year. And we're rated 44th in the country in terms of mental health access. We're in the city of medicine. We've got to fix that.
Can anyone else address that question?
Sure.
Yeah, my experience has taught me that I would not underestimate the GOP's capacity to inflict deliberate harm on their own constituents or the state of North Carolina. I don't know how close we are, but to say in their heart of hearts they might be around a turn, I just haven't seen any evidence of that. And time after time after time, and I think a lot of it comes back to, in the legacy of North Carolina, there's this legacy of white supremacy. And, the extents that they'll go to preserve power are really ghastly. So I personally think the solution is to flip the House and the Senate and to take power back. And we need millennials to do that, to be excited, to be participatory. And we just can't rely on their good graces. History has shown us that that's not an effective strategy.
I'm going to take a little bit of license here. I have a question. And communities are looking for productive solutions for reintegrating formerly incarcerated residents back into their Durham neighborhoods. what message do you have for employers and neighbors who believe that these solutions are helpful but don't want them in their own backyard, so to speak?
Thank you so much for this question. I had the opportunity to work at the Department of Justice and under the leadership of Governor Roy Cooper, who was previously the Attorney General. He did implement a new reentry council, but what no one is addressing is it lacks resources. And I'm glad that we have a governor that understands the need to do that. One of my cousins that was incarcerated, if he didn't come home to having a family business to work for, I don't think he would have been able to find a job. So I think first and foremost, a thing that you'll find is we need to really put teeth behind a lot of what the governor has proposed. If he doesn't have the House and the Senate to put money in the budget for it, it's just a dream. It's just an idea on a sheet of paper if you have no funds for it. So I think employers need to, there actually have been talks of a formal staffing hiring agency. I think we need something specific to really address how to connect individuals that were incarcerated to reenter society to find jobs for them. I also come from the food industry and the agriculture industry, and we actually have fewer barriers. So that's actually an industry where a lot of folks can come home and get a lot of jobs in that sector. We have a local farm where women that were previously incarcerated can come home and actually work on that farm and live there so that they get housing as well as employment. So I think that's a very exciting model, but there's so much more that we can do, but we definitely need to fully fund a reentry council.
Would any other candidates like to address that?
Sure, I'll go. Yeah, I think there's a variety of things. The first things I would tell employers is to ban the box. I think that there's a stigma associated with being incarcerated in this country, and there's some sweeping things. We need to reinstate voting rights for the formerly incarcerated so that they can participate in getting rid of folks that are creating policies that keep them mired in the prison industrial complex. Banning for-profit prisons, ending money bail. You know, these are some policy things that I think a lot of folks who have been stigmatized and marginalized by, mass incarceration, the war on drugs, these things disproportionately impact Black and brown communities. And in Durham, there's actually a really good model. There's TROSA. TROSA is an amazing institution that I think, aren't they doing a forum tonight? Yeah, we're not there because we're here, but TROSA is just a wonderful model. Durham born, Durham bred. They've got spaces that are in the community, fully integrated, and I think we can learn from those models to build.
And one second, shout out to Senator McKissick. He helped TROSA to get funding every single fiscal year. Big difference.
To all of that, I checked off all my boxes.
I think we've got it over. Sorry, go ahead.
We could probably hear you too.
Yeah, we're good.
Hi all, I'm Corey. I'm a senior at Duke as well. The money that is in the endowment for for Durham's housing is not being used for McDougal, and the money that is being used for McDougal is being quickly depleted. So if you were to be mayor, what are the actionable steps that you would take to make sure that those people, as well as the people who have not gone through that experience yet, are in better conditions than they are?
Okay, cool. Yeah. So we just passed a $95 million affordable housing bond, and guess what? None of that is coming to the MAC. It's all coming directly to downtown Durham. And again, the trend that I talked about earlier, $2 billion of investment in downtown, donuts for for the MAC and for the other housing projects in Durham, it's unconscionable. And so we need a radical shift. Like I said before, policy is a poverty choice, and we need to make some different choices. The thing that I would have done if I were in state senate in the midst of that crisis is declare a state of emergency. I was born and raised here in Durham. I remember Hurricane Fran came through, tore up the block. They called a state of emergency, and that was able to unlock funds that were able to be utilized to deal with the imminent crisis facing people who were suffering from, in that case, an environmental issue. But this is a man-made environmental crisis, and I think those same funds should have been leveraged in that moment of crisis to care for those people who were in a state of emergency, quite literally.
I think this is important to bring back to your vote because that $95 million bond was one of the reasons why several people didn't get elected to the city council last year because they were fighting against it. And they were right. That bond was not what it was intended to be used for. That bond was not, the public was not as educated as we needed to be before we made that vote. And I think that became loud and clear after everyone who wanted to be elected was, and the people who were not in favor of that bond were not. I think it's also important to understand that in North Carolina, we don't have a definition of state of emergency. I've been asking Senator McKissick, and I asked Governor Cooper last time I saw him, why in the world is this not happening? And the only answer I got was there's no definition for it.
Yes, it definitely is a public crisis. It is a state of emergency, and it's been a ticking time bomb. For those of us who've been paying attention, we were not surprised that this happened. We've known for years that these were substandard living conditions. I was canvassing, actually not too far from here, Marine Road and DeMar Court. They already have started renovating those properties and was shocked and quite frankly embarrassed that anyone was living there. Some of the new units already have problems. That's also unreported. So I think we need a long-term solution. It can't be piecemeal. It can't be, we're going to just put a few $1 million here and try to piece them back together. We need a long-term solution. It is a national issue. We have to figure out a way to connect job creation to renovating these homes, and we also need just a long-term solution. Our current model is not working. These are old and crumbling facilities that, quite frankly, will never really live to the standards that it should be acceptable to anyone to live like that. So we just need a long-term plan to not only fund those specific units, but to figure out long-term, what is our plan? What is our plan for affordable housing? What is our plan for public housing? And if we pay people a living wage, housing will become affordable.
Probably got time for about 2 more questions.
Good evening. My name is Sabrina Davis. I'm a second-year master's candidate here at the Sanford School. My question is for all the candidates, and it's about climate change. Assuming you all are not climate change deniers, what are your plans for climate change and the impacts that it has and will have for communities of color and minority communities here in Durham and throughout the state?
Thank you so much for that question. I've actually worked with, I think, some students here as well as students at Central. Really excited about the Sunrise Movement and have signed on to support a Green New Deal. Right here in Durham, we are getting specific about what does a Green New Deal look like for North Carolina as a whole as well as in Durham. Again, when we flip in the House and Senate and give the governor the support that he needs, we don't even have a Green Caucus. We kind of have leaders in the House and the Senate that Democrats that are passionate about climate change and believe that climate change is real and know that we're in a state of crisis, but we don't truly have a plan. We need to fully fund the Department of Environmental Quality. Secretary Regan does not have the funds he needs to even do his job. So first and foremost, we need to fully fund the state agencies that do this work. But leadership starts at the top. The issue is going to be the occupant in the White House. If we don't have a real EPA, good luck doing anything with climate change. If we don't have a federal partner to really do anything to have long-term, long-lasting change. But also thank you for highlighting environmental justice. It is Black and brown people that are the most impacted by these issues, sea level rise, our inability to make sure that we have clean air and clean drinking water that are all connected to climate change. So first and foremost, you need to elect leaders that believe that climate change is real and will put money behind real policies and real solutions. And that starts with getting in the Senate and making sure that we form a Green Caucus to actually start putting pen to the paper on what that looks like for North Carolina.
So my grandparents had a pig farm. I understand the nuisance and the environmental problems that come about from a pig farm because I lived it. I think there are 2 things that can happen in North Carolina. Number 1, we have to repeal the Hardison Act. The Hardison Act handcuffs the NCDEQ. It keeps us from having higher standards than the federal government sets for environmental regulation, regardless of what our specific industry is, and we're the world leader in hog farm. Montana doesn't care about hog farming. We do. So we have to get rid of the Hardison Act. And secondly, tort reform. Even if a corporation causes tremendous amounts of environmental problems here, there's a cap on what they have to pay for those environmental problems. If I harm one of you, there's no cap. Whatever your damage is, I have to pay it. Why should corporations get away with not having to pay for all of the damage that they cause when I can't and you can't and you can't?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up that question. Really, one of the issues of our time, of our generation, I think here in North Carolina, we need to end public subsidies of giant fossil fuel corporations. We need to oppose things like the ACC pipeline that the Southern Environmental Law Center, NC Warren, we need to stop putting money into oil and fossil fuel and fracking. It's making our water dirty, and it is perpetuating a system that is warming our planet. And you mentioned we're number 1 in pigs. We're also number 2 in solar, behind California. But that is only because we've had to claw back from the Republicans who've tried to pull away incentives for us to continue to develop solar. So, again, we mentioned it 11 times. We need to flip the House and flip the Senate so that we can have folks who have our planet in mind.
Should we head back to follow up on the McDougal Terrace before we have the closing statements? If there's any other questions, we can circle back there.
And we did have one opportunity to address that. Is there anything else you haven't said yet on that issue that you just want to make sure you get on the table today?
Well, actually, just shout out to Durham. I hate that it took that crisis to bring the community together. In recent history, I've never seen anything like that as far as its ability to really bring the community together. I also think it's really been empowering for the residents of all the properties across the city. You've seen the other issue that we found throughout this process is housing authorities don't always have resident councils. It took leadership of Ashley Kennedy and other individuals to get together as a residents council to say this is unacceptable and to apply pressure. You can't apply pressure if you're not organized and you don't have a residents council. So I'm really excited that it has invigorated the residents to, for one, they were fearful of speaking up. This instance has shown that you do have the ability to speak up. You don't have to live in unlivable conditions and be fearful of retribution just for speaking about the problems that you're having with housing. That is a very basic right. So I am excited about kind of all the organizing that has come out of it, and I think we've just seen the tip of the iceberg, and we did need to keep it going. We also need to kind of get out of the first phase. We really have to get into what is a long-term plan for all of the properties. It wasn't until this instance, there was no long-term plan for the MAC. I have been asking since 2012, what are you going to do with this property? Got no answers. So we have to be very upfront and open about what are you going to do if you're sandwiched in between downtown and Durham Tech and Central. It's prime real estate. No, everyone's afraid to say that. What is the long-term plan for the MAC? What does that look like for the residents? They deserve answers.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Ashley Kennedy, the resident council president of McDougal Terrace. She's endorsed my campaign for state senate because I've been in the MAC for years. I was born and raised in this community. I have friends who grew up there. And I didn't just show up, recently. I've been an important part of the fabric of that community. And I think something I talk with Ashley about often is that this is not new. There's a legacy of Black folks being displaced from their homes because of public policy choices. And a legacy of redlining and urban renewal, the building of Highway 147 through the heart of Hayti, that led to a lot of families being displaced, being removed from their homes. And this is a part of that legacy which is entrenched in white supremacy. We need to name that. We need to call it what it is. And we need to create policy solutions like reparations, for example, for the folks, for the descendants of the Hayti and of the Wilmington riots. These are some of the bold ideas that are going to address the root of the problem. Because poverty didn't just pop out of nowhere. I'm going to take my extra 30 seconds on this one, because this is, like I told you, Black unpopular demand. This is something that I care a lot about. Born and raised in Durham, this is a part of our legacy. It says Durham is as Bull Durham tobacco. So if we're going to actually address it, and Dr. Darity has plenty of ideas on how we can do that with the jobs guarantee and reparations, we need to get real serious about addressing the core white supremacist roots of these issues.
He can have some of my time because I'll be quick.
Thank you.
I think one of the positive things that I have seen come from this is people that you would have never seen work together before have come together to work together. And it's been so wonderful because my philosophy really is, most people have at least 80% in common, and about 20% we don't. And that's true in your own household. And if we can focus on what we have in common, we can then build out to those differences and work through those. And we can hold our leaders responsible for what they have not been doing for our community.
Thank you all for those statements. And now I'll ask you to just give a closing statement or closing argument, any points that we've neglected here that you want to make sure to work in. And you will have the great luxury of 2 minutes each to...
Yes, double up.
Okay, thank you again for being with us this evening. I really enjoyed talking with all of you. I'm also a millennial, so millennials and Gen Zs, we got to step up. We have to vote this election because guess what? If you don't vote, somebody will be making these decisions for you. I am proud to have been endorsed by a number of organizations, progressive organizations, the Progressive Democrats, the People's Alliance, as well as the Indie Week, Lillian's List, and Emily's List, the premier organizations that support women that are running for office. Just last night, I was endorsed by Vote Pro Choice, which is a national organization that focuses on the intersection of individuals that are in poverty, Black and brown issues in regards to reproductive justice. And I'm going to close by saying we need more women in government. I think that government needs not only more women, but more women of color. It's national news about how Black women are saving America. We need to put more Black women in office. If we get it done and we want a hashtag about Black Girl Magic, we need to put more Black women in office. And I'll leave you with 3 numbers, 12, 4, and 0. It has been 12 years. In Durham, we only have 2 senators. A woman has not represented this district in 12 years. This district is predominantly female. How are you going to be serious about reproductive rights and equal pay for equal work, sexual assault and violence? As a sexual assault survivor, I will legislate from a perspective of knowing what it feels like to feel powerless. I will legislate from a perspective of knowing what it feels like to not make the money that I deserved when I had the same qualifications as my male counterparts. 4, there are only 4 Black women in the state Senate. 0. I'm 36 years old. There are 0 Black women in the House or the Senate that are under 40. Durham can make history by sending 2. You can send Vernetta Austin to the House. She is under 40. You can send me to the Senate. I also will be the youngest Black woman that will currently be in the Senate, potentially the youngest one ever elected, but we can make history right here in Durham. I'm not proud of that history. We should have already done that. But very excited to continue to keep the conversation going. Again, I will legislate from my lived experience. Individuals closest to the pain should be closest to the power. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Freeland.
Oh, sure. Okay, cool. Well, first of all, yeah, thank everyone for being here. I really appreciate your presence. And, the election is right around the corner. So if you haven't voted yet, you got some big decision on your hands. I think we have here 3 very qualified candidates, and that's what it is in Durham. It's what do they call that? An embarrassment of riches. So I was, born and raised here in this community. I grew up here in Durham. I've lived here my whole life. And Senator McKissick left big shoes to fill. I think those shoes should be filled by somebody who's been here and who's been putting in work in this community and is a product of public schools and a product of this community. Y'all heard what I'm about. I can mention some of my endorsements as well. I mentioned the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People, Equality NC, Run for Something, our mayor, Steve Schul, our previous mayor, Bill Bell, the incumbent senator, Mickey Mishaw has endorsed my campaign for North Carolina State Senate. So, I've got a lot of great support for people that have kind of vetted and vouched for my capacity to lead in this very important seat. I just want to close with saying that, I'll say it for a 3rd time, poverty is a policy choice. I think my ideas are probably left of both of the other candidates. I don't hear anyone else calling for things like marijuana decriminalization.
I'm working on it.
Oh, good, okay.
In the General Assembly.
I haven't.
It's a part of our platform, sorry.
Do I get that?
Clarify.
Do I get that 20 seconds?
Clarify,
Okay.
it's not accurate.
Well, okay, so I guess let me clarify and say I hadn't heard it. I know that's can be a controversial topic for some folks. I've heard folks call for a jobs guarantee or reparations. And but there's more similarities than differences between the candidates here. And I'm somebody who's going to boldly and unapologetically represent my values. I wear it on my sleeve. I'm not going to pull it out when it's convenient. I'm going to give it to you right here at Duke in my hoodie, and because that's who I am. And I think that's what we need is bold leadership here for the state of North Carolina, especially if we want to flip the House and the Senate. Because what happens here in Durham, we have the opportunity to be leaders in the state and to be the progressive pulse of other counties in the state of North Carolina. And in order to do that, I think we need truly progressive, bold, unapologetic leadership to step into that role, and that's what I hope to be as a product of and a representative for Durham's District 20. Thank you.
And we let you reclaim your time.
Thank you. Reclaim.
I'm also a lifelong North Carolinian. I've been here for 25 years, and I can rattle off local, state, national endorsements that I've received as well. We've all received them. The bottom line is I've spent my career working with people, not with PACs, not with a political agenda. I'm focused on people, service to people. And that's the job of a senator, is to be in service to people. As an attorney, every single day, I advocate, I negotiate, and I work in the law. What's the job of a senator? To advocate, to negotiate, and to work on the law. There's a reason Senator McKissick came to me and asked me to run and has supported my candidacy. He's known me for 20 years. He knows the values that I bring. He knows the man that I am. I'm 47 years old. I've got the life experience and I've got the professional experience that actually translates to the job. And if you want to talk about underrepresented, 0 in U.S. history. I will be the first, if elected, trans senator in U.S. history. But there's so much more to me than that. But it's a consideration. Everyone needs a seat at the table, and we don't have one. Thank you.
So that brings us to the end of this evening's forum. Thank you so very much for being with us. And a few items of thanks. Again, we're very grateful to Dr. Brittany Sansbury, to BJ Riddell for amazing organizing. Thank you so very much, Brittany and BJ. On behalf of Asher and myself, we're really grateful to all of the members of our audience for attending. On behalf of Duke University Stanford School of Policy and our entire university family, thank you for being with us, and we hope that you will join us one last time in thanking our wonderful slate of candidates. Thank you.